Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you guys all the books that I read in the month of December. So let's just get right into it. The first book I read in the month of December was The Broken Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second book in the 100,000 Kingdoms series. I absolutely loved it. I didn't like it quite as much as the first, but I still really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. And this one takes place in the same world as the first book, obviously, which consists of this magical world, and the capital of the 100,000 Kingdoms is the Sky Tree. And so there's the city, and then there's also the palace that is literally like this giant tree. And so this second book is a companion book, and it takes place in that same city, but not in the castle. It takes place underneath it. So this takes place in the city of Shadow, which is literally like in the shadow of the world tree. So it's kind of like grittier and darker, but we still get all of the gods and godlings kind of meddling around in human affairs, even though they're not supposed to. And our main character and narrator is a blind woman. She's blind except for she can see magic. And so it's about kind of her like hiding what she can do from the law enforcement of Shadow because she doesn't want to get in trouble, but also her kind of discovering her like origin story. And it was so good and I loved it. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 star, and I can't wait to read the last book in this series. It's so good. The next book I read in December was Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. This I read an e-arc of, and I believe it comes out sometime in January. I can't remember exactly when. And this is about a girl who lives in New York, in Manhattan, and she goes to a really fancy private school, like Gossip Girl style. And actually the book itself has a lot of Gossip Girl references. And she lives there because her parents own this huge chain of fast food, like burger restaurants, like diner almost. And then it also follows a boy. He goes to the same school, but his family is a little less well off. And they own this really popular deli in Brooklyn. And it's about them and their parents' companies getting into this Twitter war, and them like kind of orchestrating it and going along with it for the sake of their parents and the sake of their parents' businesses. But along the way, they start to fall in love. It was really cute. I think I'm kind of falling out of love with YA contemporary romance, especially when it takes place in this kind of context. It's super like, there's a lot of pop culture references, and I just find stuff like that really kind of bogs down a story. And I think it's kind of hard to escape in a book like this because we're literally talking about like Twitter. So I feel like for it to stay relevant, you have to put pop culture references in it. And also, like, I don't know, I think I just have a hard time with YA romance now because I'm not a teenager anymore. And I don't think that's true for everyone. I think you can totally still enjoy YA romance if you're not a teenager. But I don't know, I've just been having a hard time with it lately. Maybe I'm just reading the wrong books, because when it comes to YA romance, like so much of it just gets on my nerves. And so if you have any recommendations for a YA romance that just doesn't get on my nerves, please recommend it to me. I still really liked this. I thought it was really cute. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Next book I read in the month of December is An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. This is the same author that wrote Sorcery of Thorns, which kind of blew up in BookTube. And honestly, like, as a bookseller, it really blew up this year. I've read Sorcery of Thorns. I really liked it. So I went back and I read her debut. And I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a fae-based story about this mortal girl who does these really fantastic paintings. And I guess the whole like premise around this is that fair folk can't practice like craft, so they can't cook, they can't paint, they can't play music, because when they try to do that, like the instruments or the food or the paint turns into dust. So they have to go to humans to do it for them. And so this girl is really well known as like a really talented portrait artist. And the Prince of Fall, the Autumn Prince, the Prince of Fall, the Autumn Prince, is kind of known as this like malicious, stoic figure with the fair folk. And so then he comes and has her paint his portrait and they start to fall in love. She ends up painting like mortal sorrow in his eyes, and that's seen as like a huge weakness for the folk. And so he gets really mad and he wants to take her back to trial. So they go on this like journey, and there's a little bit more to the world than that, but we don't really get it in this story. And that's kind of why I knocked off a star. Like I wanted a little bit more. I did really like the simplicity and like the shortness of it. I think it packed a good punch, but it wasn't quite all there for me. I did enjoy it. I do recommend it. Apparently, this is a fanfic of A Court of Thorns and Roses, and if that's true, I can totally see it. And maybe that's why we don't get as much world building as I wanted, because it's actually based off of a fanfic. I don't know if that's true. If someone can confirm, I would love to know. The next books I read in December, I'm going to show together because it's a trilogy. I read the Binti trilogy by Nnedi Okorafor. First is just called Binti, and then Binti Home, and Binti The Night Masquerade. This is such an interesting sci-fi series of novellas. You can actually buy them all as one book now. And I didn't love it as much as I hoped to and wanted to, but I did still really like it. I gave the first a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I gave the second a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I gave the third a 4 out of 5 stars. So my favorite was definitely the second. So it's about this girl named Binti, and she lives on Earth, and not a lot of people do anymore because there are so many other planets and species that we know of at this point. Her village and her race of people are seen as like very simple people. Basically, like, it's how racist white people see Black people. That's how the whole world sees her. But then she's accepted into this really prestigious university on this other planet, and her family doesn't want her to go. They feel like she's gonna abandon them if she goes, but she's the first of her race of people to be accepted, so she goes anyways. And on the ship going there, there is a terrorist attack, and she's the only survivor. So Binti goes through like a lot of trauma in the first book. I think the trauma that she goes through, like, it left me feeling like a little bit triggered. Throughout the series, she kind of, it's about her discovering herself, but also her loss of identity and her control over her identity and her like bodily autonomy. And the whole thing was really fantastic. I really enjoyed it, but that part kind of left me feeling like uncomfortable, and I think that's why I rated it lower. I do recommend this if that sounds something like you're interested in, and I really enjoyed what it had to say, like I said, about identity and bodily autonomy. So the next book I read in the month of November, I feel like I've talked about so much now, and that is The Sky Weaver by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is the third book in the Ascari series. Like I said, I've talked about this a lot lately, but the Ascari series, the first book, is about a girl named Asha, and it takes place in a fantasy world where there's dragons, but dragons are like outlawed, and stories are outlawed because dragons are attracted to stories. The reason they're outlawed is because the kingdom that the main character lives in and that her father rules over was like basically burnt down by a dragon. So this is the third book in the companion series, follows a different character, but we do get to see the past characters of the past 2 books. So I can't really say much about it, but I really enjoyed it. I loved it a lot. It's a female-female romance about the general of the army of the kingdom that we just talked about, and a girl who's like this really well-known pirate. She's known as the Death Dancer, because she has this magical spindle that she can skip through space with. Space as in like kilometers, not spaces in like the planets. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really fantastic. It surprised me, it shocked me, it was romantic, it was so great. I highly recommend this series. It's so fantastic, 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I'm not really one to read a lot of classics. I put quotations because the literary canon is composed by white scholar men, and I don't agree with it. That's besides the point. It's actually my first time reading the very original Christmas Carol story. As a kid, obviously, you read like a lot of different abridged versions of A Christmas Carol. I really enjoyed it. I think, like, for Charles Dickens, who wrote huge novels, because at the time they were paid by the word, and has very like depressing characters and endings, this one actually was really good. And it reading this just reminded me of that tweet that was going around that was like, Christmas Carol proves that we need supernatural intervention to convince rich people to do good. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really fantastic. If you're looking for like a classic Christmas story to read next year, or even right now, if you're still in the holiday spirit, I highly recommend this. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. And I feel like we all know the story of A Christmas Carol, but it's about this dude, and he's an asshole, and he's rich, and he doesn't like Christmas, and he's mean to everyone. He doesn't donate to charities. And so he's visited by 3 ghosts, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And they kind of convince him that he shouldn't be so rude. Next book I read in December was Theory by Diane Brand. Diane Brand, I discovered her in university. We read some of her poetry. She's a Caribbean Canadian author, and she mostly writes poetry, but this is one of her most recent novels. And it's super short. The text is huge. It's basically about this person who is trying to write their dissertation, and they're about to turn 40. And so they kind of talk about the 3 different women that they've fallen in love with while they've been working on their dissertation. And all throughout, they still haven't finished their dissertation. So it's a really academic book. I talked a lot about in my Goodreads review about how I think people who haven't been in academia won't like this, not because I think it's above their like intellect, but because I think you'll think it's boring because it talks a lot about like literature theory. Like, philosophers come up a lot, and even just the way it's written is not colloquial in any sense. And so I just think you'll think that it's boring. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I think what it has to say about the world of academia and what it does to your brain is so fantastic, and it's in a context where academia and like love intersect, and it's so interesting to me because when you're in academia, you're only surrounded by people who are in academia. Like, you're told the only thing you can do with your degree is to keep getting more degrees. And it takes a lot to, like, I'm on a year off right now. I feel like it takes a lot to step out of that and discover that there are so many other things that you can do. And so this is kind of what that's about. It's about being in academia and trying to form a romantic relationship with someone when the only thing you know and the only thing you're told that you know is the world of academia. So I found it really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I think it was really interesting of Diane Brand to couple that with gender and identity. Our main character's dissertation is about gender and race, and basically the entire novel, we don't know our narrator's gender. At the end, you learn a little bit more about it, but I think it was really great to have it kind of ambiguous, especially because when I first started reading it, I just assumed that the narrator was a man. And but you don't really know throughout the entire book. You have no idea. So I found it really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. Not everyone is gonna love this, and the Goodreads reviews really show that. I think people either love this book or they just are like, what is this? This literally had no plot. I really liked it. I would recommend it if you think that you would like it. And the last thing I read in the month of December was also by Diane Brand. It's Fierce Departures. It's a collection of excerpts of her longer works of poetry. Going into that, I didn't know that, so I actually didn't give this a rating because I thought it was going to be a collection of her short poetry. Turns out Diane Brand doesn't really write short poetry. But I will say I absolutely loved what was in here. I like even dog-eared a couple of pages. I was going to read her other works anyways, but reading the excerpts makes me want to read them even more. So I don't recommend this, but I recommend Diane Brand's poetry. And I didn't give it a rating because there's no full work of poetry in this, so I didn't feel right rating it, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. So overall, I've read 10 books in the month of December. My goal was to read 12, and I just went under that. I was so close, but I didn't quite get there. So those are all the books I read in the month of December. Let me know, have you read any of these? Would you like to read any of these? What did you think of them? What did you read in December? Let's chat below. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you next time.